Hey guys, welcome back. It's Ripe again, back with more Karen stories. In this video, an entitled neighbor claimed it is her turn to live in my private property, insisting that she wanted to buy this house for decades and I don't deserve it. Let's dive right into the video. So the first one starts like this. When my husband and I bought our house, we were in a little bit of a bidding war because somebody else also wanted it really badly. We were willing to offer more money and got the house, which we spent the next 5 years loving and even doing some slight renovations to make it even better. Since things were done through a real estate agent, we did not know who the other couple was that wanted the house, just the fact that there were competing offers. Anyway, now we are settled here and I had a daughter and a son 2 years later. It was a good school district and we were basically set on just staying there for the long term to let them get a good education and just live in a good place. Everybody was happy with the situation aside from the couple that wanted the house apparently. I did not even think about them, but just assumed that they took their money and got a different house somewhere else, like, you know, normal people do. But the wife was not a normal person and due to that and some other factors, she will be known here as Karen. I never met her husband, so he could have just been as bad or normal, so no meme name for him. I was having a normal day with 2 young kids as one can when the doorbell rang and I went to see who it was. I was expecting the plumber to check the heating system before we needed it, which is why I opened it without looking first. The big mistake on my part. It was not the plumber, but instead a woman that I think wanted to look like she was from the show Jersey Shore or something like that. It was weird. She had big hair, a bad spray tan, dangling jewelry, and kept pointing her 5-inch fake nails in my face as she spoke. I knew this was not gonna be good, but hoped that I could help her and make her leave fast. Karen did not have the intention of doing so. Me, can I help you? Karen, hello, yes, I'm here to buy the house. Me, I think you have the wrong place. Karen, I'm no stupid lady, I know what house this is. I got the money and I'm ready to buy. Me, this house is not for sale. I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding here. Karen, oh my god, how dumb are you? Not listening to a word I'm saying. I'm here to buy the house. That last sentence, she punctuated every word with a clap of her hands and I was not gonna deal with that attitude. Her loudness was gonna wake the napping baby. Maybe you're not hearing me. This house is not for sale. You have the wrong place. Leave. I tried to close the door, but she stuck her leg in the way. Karen, 5 years ago my husband and I were gonna buy this house. Well, now we have the money and I want it. I realized now that she was the person that we had outbid for the house. If you think it took me long to put that together, then you have never dealt with 2 kids and not sleeping enough. Me, oh well, it is not for sale. We are not planning on leaving. Karen, it is my turn for the damn house. You had 5 years and now I have the money and it is my turn. Get out! Yes, she actually thought that having the money that we spent 5 years ago on the house meant that she could force us out now. The conversation went on for a while and I learned that she had been waiting more than 5 years for this specific house and she tried to buy it for like 20 years or something with it never being on the market. I guess missing her chance set her off because now I could not get her away from my property. I told her I was gonna call the police and she beat me to it by calling them to come because I was supposedly stealing her house. The police came of course and were confused when Karen was saying it was her house and that she wanted me to leave. At first they assumed that I broke in, but I proved it was my house and explained Karen had lost the bidding on it 5 years ago. Karen was insistent to the police that her having the money now meant that I had to leave because it was her turn to live in the house. Since she wanted it before me and that gave her some kind of right, well, honestly, she was not making much sense. The police told her to go home, but of course she insisted that this was her home and she was not gonna leave. Instead, she told the police that she wanted to press charges against me for stealing her property and then refusing to allow her access to it. However, the police refused to arrest me on the basis that I had done nothing wrong. Instead, they told her that if she didn't calm down, she was the one going to be arrested for trespassing. They explained that she couldn't force me to sell the house to her and that it was not on the market anymore. She took a few steps back and stopped yelling. It was the first 3 seconds of peace since she had arrived on my doorstep, then she swung her giant tote bag at me and got me right in the head with it. I felt something sharp swipe at me too, which I think was her nails or something, but she was in handcuffs before she could do any more damage to me. I was knocked off my feet from the blow and it turned out that the psycho Karen had put a brick in her bag. She basically hit me with a brick but without the intensity. I was fine, but she was now being arrested for attacking me and refusing to leave the property. I was terrified because I didn't know if her husband was gonna show up next for round 2 or if she would come back once she was released. I gave my statement and the police never followed up with me, so I don't know if she pled guilty or got away with some light sentence. All I knew was that I was not taking a chance and got a restraining order against her. If she tried to come back to the house, I was not gonna answer the door, but instead just call the police. It's been about 8 months now, and I waited to see if anything else was gonna happen, but it seems like the whole thing was done the same day it started. The only thing I can say was that I'm glad she didn't get near my kids and that she did not have a gun or anything like that on her. My husband made me get checked out by a doctor later that day, who said that since the brick was in the tote bag, the contact didn't do any damage aside from knocking me over. That did not stop him from wanting to basically kill this woman for trying to lay a hand on me though. I've heard from people that there's no such thing as a perfect house, and when we got this one, I had proven them wrong because everything about the house and the neighborhood was perfect. I guess the crazy lady who wanted the house showed that those people might be right. Something can always go wrong. My one piece of advice is look before opening the door, and if you don't know the person on the other side, then don't open it. It could be a Karen with a brick. Indeed guys, moral of the story, don't open your door to a Karen with a brick in her tote bag. Either way, if you enjoy the crazy Karen stories, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel because that would help me tremendously. The next one is titled Revenge in University. This happened a few years ago, back when I was a freshman in university. I was taking a class that required partner work, and I'm certain most people can see where this is heading already. So as a result of our partnership in that class, we eventually became friends, more so due to our only common factor being neither of us belonged to any of the major friend groups that had formed from the other freshmen being from the same high school. We hung out, chatted, and talked about our other classmates, our current workloads, and what we were doing at the university in the first place. So the partner work expected of us was literally just simple analysis of articles we were given links to online far earlier in the week, and after summarizing the article to give our opinions on it. I finished reading the article and started working on the assignment the day it was assigned and needed his opinion to add to what I'd already written, but he always had excuses. It was too much to read, he had other assignments that took up more of his time, and on the night before it was due, when I'd already finished my half and asked him in a Skype call what he thought of the article, he fell asleep. So I did what anyone would do, I wrote his half of the paper too, by simply stating his opinion was in full agreement of mine and just submitted it. The next day the paper was, he thanked me for doing the paper, and well, he told me that it wouldn't happen again. I offered him a copy of my work, which he denied, expecting that he wouldn't need it. I never offered any copies of my work to him after his first instance. It was an annoyance, but not a complete deal breaker for me. He was still a friend, even if only for convenience sake. I was getting used to my workload, or at least attempting to. I turned in my assignments on time for every class, but his inability to actually do the small amount the partner work required of him led me to staying up later than I'd been used to. As a result, I arrived late to that class quite often. We attempted to find more friends with common interests, we made clubs, I attended his, he forgot to attend mine on a regular basis. His apartment had rats and he couldn't bring himself to throw out the traps, so I helped. His apartment had water damage and the shower stopped working as a result. Well, I let him use mine. A lot of take on his end and no gift to the friendship whatsoever. Closer towards the end of the semester, it was the final day of my club-given finals that happened next week. Instead of offering to show up to it, he offered that his father would pay for some takeout. Holding myself to my club duties as the sole member, I told him I would show up after my club ended, and he told me they would have probably eaten by then, but I could still show up if I wanted. As per usual, no one attended. The time my club was scheduled to run for ended, and I made my way to hang out with him. After a while I figured he was not gonna show, so I ordered my food and waited for it to be done. Lo and behold, he walks through the door with his father and glares at me. With as much attitude as possible, he said, "You only came here because you were going to get free food," with the most malice I've heard from him in a while. I also noticed his father acting strangely. I had spent enough time with my so-called friend to have a general idea that he was not quite right in the head, and had the vague idea that his father in his age was finally showing signs of some mental disorder, which he was most likely taken advantage of and had been all this time. I responded, "I already paid for my food." He rolled his eyes at me, ordered his food, and had his father pay for it, moving to the booth far to the other end of the restaurant, away from the one I was sitting at. Finals were approaching, and our final project in the class, which my partner had been avoiding speaking of, working on, or even thinking about, was gonna be due within a week, so he attempted to talk me into working on it. Unbeknownst to him, I'd already been working on the project and it was nearly done. What I'd become more focused on was that my grade in that class had dropped to failing due to my attendance, and our professor gave me an ultimatum: leave the class and retake it later, or take and pass the final exam and turn in our final project, and then I would pass. I informed my partner of this, and he smirked. "They're trying to save you because you're a sinking ship otherwise, but I'm fine. Work with me on the project, don't boss out, don't be a bitch," he said mockingly. I'd had enough of him at this point: his laziness, his rudeness, his outright hostility, and the final topping to it all, his absolute joy at my current predicament. The dean of the school said that I couldn't leave the class even if I had wanted to. It was too late for that, but that the professor could work something out with me. And it finally hit me. I realized from our previous partner work, even if I finished, I could fail and my slacker partner would still pass. He'd get given the final project grade from my work, so I decided if I was going down thanks to him, he was going down thanks to me. So I did what I hadn't done earlier. I informed our professor the reason that I was arriving so late earlier in the semester. I told our professor that he never even read any articles and certainly didn't have any of the papers that were submitted, given I wrote all of them by myself. Seeing as my partner never looked over my papers when they were turned in, after the second time he had shirked off on the work, I'd made sure multiple hints were thrown into each paper after pointing at my partner's lack of an actual opinion. Upon first viewing it, it seemed like he agreed, but my vocabulary put strong emphasis on mine being the only real opinion upon closer examination. Our professor said that I could do the final project by myself if I wanted to, though told me that it would still be better if I worked with him on this to lighten the load on both of us. Well, I chose to work alone. He did not smile, he did not talk to me the remaining days of the semester, he did not speak to anyone really. He did not show up the next semester, and I still saw him in town though for a bit after, and everyone in our current year still looks back on him harshly. Because not only did it turn out he was a huge a-hole and slacker in our one shared class, but he was a slacker in his other classes on top of being an a-hole to everyone else around him. I have no real way of knowing exactly, but I figure our professor, upon learning that I had done all the work myself, most likely gave him the option to show proof that he had worked on the papers, and after it became evident that I wasn't lying, removed all his grades for those papers, causing his grade to drop below passing. Another possibility is that our professor asked him to actually write all the papers with his own opinion on them, a feat which would be impossible for him at this point given that most of the articles were easily 35 to 40 pages long, and he still also had to do a final project on top of that with less than 3 days to complete it all. And the next one is a petty revenge story. So my 42 male ex-wife, 44 female, and I were married for almost 20 years. Over that time she had 4 affairs of varying degrees, including a sexual relationship with a very close friend of mine from our church. I tried to make it work, and after the last emotional affair, I just couldn't do it anymore. I filed for divorce just over 2 years ago. We are still going through the divorce and she's been high conflict the whole time. She has painted herself as a victim, and I got a new church but still have some friends at my old one. I attended there for over 30 years. So, my petty revenge: my girlfriend and I have been dating since January. She's aware of my situation and we are having fun. I have older kids and she has younger kids. For Labor Day we both had the day off and wanted to do something fun. I mentioned that my old church does a picnic every year at a park. There are games and activities for the kids and a big potluck barbecue. I told her my ex would be there, but it's a big event and we could keep to ourselves. I would also be able to introduce my girlfriend to friends from my old church. My girlfriend made sure she was extra cute, but we had matching socks and I wore a shirt that said "Built for Conflict" on the back. We got to the barbecue and my girlfriend made a dessert to share and I was grilling. My ex saw us and looked beside herself. She eventually came over and tapped my GF on the shoulder and said, "Hi, I'm X's name. I'm my name's wife." My GF said, "Nice to meet you," and held out her hand to shake my ex's hand. My ex then said, "It is awkward for you to be here, and I hope you feel that way." My girlfriend responded, "Okay," and my ex walked off. Later my ex approached me and said, "This is not your church anymore. I think you should leave." I said, "Not gonna happen," and kept walking. She went back to her friends, my old friends, and was just distraught. She eventually asked the pastor to ask me to leave. He is my best friend and was the best man at my wedding. He came and talked to me so he could tell her that he did. I told him she needed to grow up and I was not leaving. He went back to my ex and she was unhinged, trying to say that we had to leave. She tried to make it some spiritual thing or something. Eventually, she gave up and went to the friend she had an affair with and his wife to be comforted. They are still friends. I didn't get it. My girlfriend and I just watched and laughed. My ex has been terrible this whole time, and whatever control or narrative she thought she had was destroyed. Everyone watched as she just acted like a witch and we smiled and waved. In the end though, the kids had fun and we got to catch up with old friends and my ex-wife got put in her place. It was a good day. Side note, by the way, my girlfriend is stunning and several people just stopped with a dumbfounded look on their face when they saw her. It was such a flex to people who wanna see me fail. And the next one is a pro-revenge story. And please let me know in the comments whether you prefer pro-revenge or petty revenge. For me, I gotta say, I could not only read petty or only read pro-revenge stories, I always need this mix and variety. I lived on the end unit of a townhouse complex. When we first moved in, the back fence was gone. The super told us that it had blown down in a windstorm and they were going to replace it as soon as they can. Since this was an end unit, there was an extra little piece of grass on the side which we had to pay extra money a month for. It had a little fence with a gate that opened to the driveway. I noticed the gate was constantly left open. I assumed that the original lock was weak and not closing properly or something, so I replaced it. It did not help, so I put a padlock on it. I came home from work that day to find the whole lock broken off. It looked like the fence had been kicked in. I did not see anything stolen from the yard, not that they would have to kick in the fence to do so anyway, so I then asked my next door neighbor if they had seen anything. They said that they had seen my neighbors in behind us cutting through our yard. He had been complaining before about walking the 50 feet or so to go around the houses, and I guess the storm knocking the fence over was the perfect opportunity for him. I had never met this neighbor yet, so I decided to go with a more passive route. I bought some orange snow fence and a few no trespassing signs. But those were about as useless as spitting at a fire. They were torn down in a few days. So then I was out washing my car one day when I finally ran into my neighbor cutting through my yard. I tried to be polite. Me, "Hey, you're not really supposed to be cutting through my yard." Him, "That's not your yard, that's common property." Me, "Ah, okay, I understand the confusion." So we pay extra on the end unit for the little patch on the side. Him, "No, we all get to the edge of our house. Anything else is just common area. I'm allowed to be here." Me, "Look, I don't want to have to call the cops or something. Just please stay off of our property and stop damaging my gate." He did not say anything more, just continued on his way, but that is when I started noticing garbage appearing all over my yard. Cigarette butts and empty cigarette packs, beer bottles and stuff that my wife nor I have never really used. So we knew it had to be him throwing stuff into our yard. I'd be standing at my back door and he would not even try to hide when he was cutting through anymore. He would be just looking up at me the whole time. I knew until the new fence went up that there was nothing I could really do. So cue the petty revenge. I had 2 guinea pigs and I would have to clean out their cage once a week or so. I used to scoop the poop and hay into the garbage, but I knew a better place to put it now. For the next few months, yeah, it took a while to get a new fence, I took the poop and I dumped it right in front of the gate. Dog poop or human poop could have worked, but the one nice thing about guinea pig poop is it just looks like mud, so he had no idea it was even there. For months he trudged through poop every time he cut through my yard. I heard him complain about the mud once, as he had just gotten new shoes. They finally got us the new fence and I saw the neighbor walking around one day and he gave me a dirty look like I had done something wrong. We still get the odd garbage thrown over the fence, but nothing worse than that. My wife and I turned the little side yard into a garden, always seemed to be nicely fertilized for some reason. So I work as a handyman/builder. Today's job was dig up some turf from somebody's back garden and wheelbarrow it around to the front of the house, down the drive and into the skip across the road. While I was doing said job, another building company came to the house to take down an old pergola. They showed up in a pickup which they parked right across the entrance to the drive. I was wheeling some turf out as they arrived, so I asked the driver if he wouldn't mind pulling back a couple of foot so I could get past. Rather than just pulling back, he got out, looked at the front of his truck, shrugged and just said, "Nah, you got plenty of space, mate," and walked away to the house. Fair enough, I had space, although not exactly plenty, maybe 18 inches or so. I could squeeze through, but that didn't make him any less of an idiot who had made my life harder for no real reason. I could not be bothered to argue, so I just carried on. So here's where the revenge comes in. When I got back around to the back of the house, the builder and his mate were looking at the pergola. I heard him say to his mate, "Damn it, we left the ladders at the yard, didn't we?" I smiled, knowing I had not one but 2 ladders in the back of my van that would be perfect for the job. I would have happily lent them both, always happy to help a fellow tradesman, but not this guy. He could have easily helped me, but decided to be an idiot instead, so no ladders for him. He did ask the homeowner if they had one, but he didn't. I got the feeling that he knew he had burned his bridges with me already because he did not ask me. So I spent the afternoon working while watching these guys trying to dismantle a pergola from ground level. I watched them jumping up and down, stretching up with their drills at arm's length. They tried standing on flower pots, they tried and failed. To actually climb up on the structure, they eventually settled on standing on his toolbox. I'm not sure the 8 inches or so lift they got from that was worth the bend it made in the lid, but it was at least enough to do the job. I guess they were desperate by that point. They were about 4 hours and 95% of the way into what should have been a maximum 2-hour job by the time I finished myself and made sure to leave my van doors open while I packed up so they could see the ladders in my van. I'm not sure they saw, but I hope they did. And yeah guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. And also check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on Spotify, Amazon, Audible and other podcast platforms. You will often find exclusive episodes and early access to new content. Furthermore, please check out my Patreon by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or my YouTube membership program for even more exclusive stories. Thank you so much, and I will see you again tomorrow.